J'ouvre maintenant la séance.
I now call this meeting to order. Welcome to the Public Accounts Committee. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082.
From the Department of Public Works and Government Services, Lorenzo Irachi, Assistant Deputy Minister, Policy Planning and Communications, and the Treasury Board Secretariat, Brian Gear, Executive Director, Policy Planning and Performance, Priorities and Planning Sector. I understand you, gentlemen, you both have an opening statement. So I'll begin with Mr. Irachi. You have the floor for up to 5 minutes, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are gathered on the unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe peoples. I am pleased to be here to support this committee in its study of the service, maintenance, and storage garage building at Rideau Hall, built by the National Capital Commission, or NCC. To do that, Mr. Chair, allow me to provide an overview of the relationship between the Minister of Public Services and Procurement, the Department of Public Services and Procurement Canada, and the NCC. In 2015, the government published the Open and Accountable Government document, which sets out the framework for portfolio management and identifies the roles and responsibilities of ministers and their departments. This framework includes the central tenet of ministerial responsibility on a range of administrative, procedural, and institutional matters. As this committee knows, Crown corporations play an important function for the government in their capacity to operate at arm's length and deliver upon government priorities in a way that more closely resembles private entities as opposed to government departments. They benefit from considerable operational autonomy and are governed by Part 10 of the Financial Administration Act.
Appel au règlement, Monsieur le Président.
Juste une minute, s'il vous plaît. Oui, Madame Secrétaire de Gouvernement.
Just a moment. I think that it just got fixed, but we had no video of the room that you were meeting in. But I think that I just saw what was happening for a brief second, but we just didn't have the feed. Sorry about that. All good. Mr. Clerk, do you think it's working? All right, we will continue. Apologies again.
Merci beaucoup. The Open and Accountable Government Framework clearly sets out the importance of respecting the operational independence of these organizations while also ensuring that their overall direction and policies align with those of the government. La Commission de la Capitale Nationale.
The National Capital Commission is a Crown corporation whose mandate derives from its enabling legislation, so the National Capital Act. Under this act, the Commission has a distinct legal identity, as well as its own control and accountability frameworks. As the National Capital Commission is a Crown corporation, oversight of its activities is the responsibility of its board of directors. The board must ensure that it acts in the best interests of the corporation, or of society rather, and that it exercises prudence and diligence. Ultimately, the board is accountable to Parliament through the minister. The day-to-day operations of the National Capital Commission are the responsibility of its chief executive officer, who is ultimately accountable to the board for the overall management and performance of the corporation. As outlined in the 2015 document, Open and Accountable Government, Public Services and Procurement Canada is responsible for ensuring that the Crown obtains overall strategic direction, which includes examining and guiding the development of potential new activities. We have a number of key intervention points for assessing and monitoring the company's performance in order to advise the minister whether or not we believe the company's performance is consistent with the achievement of public policy objectives. One of these is the review of the annual master plan, which is submitted to the minister for recommendations to Treasury Board for approval.
Function at arm's length from the government. This lever allows ministers to ensure the overall direction is consistent with government policy. In our review of the NCC's corporate plans, we ensure that the overall direction and performance aligns with government policy and direction. What is not included as part of the plan are specifics for every project being delivered, nor the underlying business decisions behind them. This is left to the Crown Corporation and its board of directors. For example, we are working with the National Capital Commission and other government bodies on assessment on asset management, working towards a plan and funding to address the deferral maintenance of assets within the NCC portfolio. The NCC's corporate plan would include the overall plan, with the NCC responsible to implement day-to-day project management under its own authorities. Monsieur le Président, en résumé, service public.
Mr. Chair, in summary, Public Services and Procurement Canada works at arm's length with the National Capital Commission and assists the Minister of Public Services and Procurement to ensure that the Commission's direction reflects the government's strategic objectives and overall direction. Thank you. I'll be pleased to answer your questions. Thank you very much.
Up to 5 minutes, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello, everyone.
Brian Gear, and I am the Executive Director at the Treasury Board Secretariat, responsible for the Crown Corporation Centre of Expertise. The Centre of Expertise provides advice and guidance on matters of governance, accountability, and reporting. It also coordinates horizontal government-wide initiatives applicable to Crown corporations. Mr. Chair, Parliament set out the governance framework for Crown corporations in the Financial Administration Act Part 10, which places the Board of Directors to be accountable to Parliament through a responsible minister. In the case of the National Capital Commission, it is the Minister of Public Services and Procurement. The Board of Directors is responsible for the oversight of a Crown Corporation's business activities, to act in the best interest of the corporation, and to exercise due care and diligence. It is responsible for providing strategic direction, overseeing management performance, and holding its management to account. Responsibility over the day-to-day operations of a Crown Corporation is vested in a Chief Executive Officer who is accountable to the Board of Directors for the overall management and performance of the corporation. Given their unique mandates and operating environments, Crown corporations are not subject to the financial, administrative, budgeting, and human resource regimes that apply to departments. This provides them with the requisite managerial and administrative flexibility they need to be able to deliver on their mandates. These factors explain why Treasury Board oversight of Crown corporations is at a different level than departments, as Crown corporations have greater managerial autonomy. Treasury Board's primary responsibility with respect to Crown corporation governance is the approval of corporate plans and operating and capital budgets on the recommendation of the responsible minister. To support its corporate plan responsibilities, Treasury Board makes regulations and Treasury Board Secretariat issues high-level guidance with respect to the form and content of the plans, as well as the summaries of corporate plans and budgets. These summaries are then tabled in Parliament by the responsible minister following Treasury Board approval. In its role of supporting Treasury Board, the Secretariat reviews the corporate plan and capital and operating budgets that have been submitted by the responsible minister. The submissions are reviewed with questions that include, do the activities articulated in the corporate plan and budgets align with the Crown Corporation's mandate? Do the activities align with the government's overall policy and fiscal directions? And is the plan sustainable from a financial point of view? Specific projects that fit within the mandate and broad activities approved in the corporate plan are not subject to Treasury Board scrutiny. As Mr. Irachi explained, responsible ministers and portfolio lead departments have a role. And as I said earlier, the Board of Directors has a primary oversight responsibility, and the CEO is responsible for the day-to-day operations. Finally, Crown corporations are accountable to Parliament through the Board of Directors and the responsible minister, and report their plans and results to Parliament regularly. With that, Mr. Chair, I'm available to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you both very much. Turning now to our first round, and we have until noon, so I think we will get through 2 full rounds. Mr. Stewart, you have the floor for up to 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thank the witnesses for being here today. We appreciate it. First off, who approved this expenditure? Either of you can answer.
So again, what happens in terms of Treasury Board involvement, it is the approval of the corporate plan, as well as the capital and operating budgets. The plan and the budgets cover major activities and significant line items within the budgets. So In this case, I think of this particular project, it would be rolled up in a higher level line because these are really meant to be higher level documents.
Okay. How many floors are contained within the $8 million barn project?
How many?
How many stories? How many floors?
I actually don't know the answer to that question. I know that it's a vehicle storage facility, and based on the pictures, it seems to be a one-story building, but I have not visited, so the National Capital Commission could probably provide you with details about the building, its size, number of floors, and so on.
If it is in fact a one-story or one-floor building or barn, can you explain why it has an elevator?
Well, in that case, it must have multiple stories. The building is, my understanding based on publicly available information, is it serves a number of functions, including vehicle storage, it's a repair garage, it's equipment and tool storage, it's a workspace. My understanding is that the National Capital Commission uses this building for operational equipment to be able to manage the 79 acres of land on Rideau. But in terms of how...
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate that. My point is, if you can see in the picture, I don't know if I can table these, Chair. There's no French and English documents, but just the photo I think is important. It's clearly a one-story building that has an elevator. So does the elevator go up or down? And if it goes down, what's under there?
The question would have to be answered by the National Capital Commission. I would be speculating. I would assume if it's a garage, if there is an elevator, it could be that it's to be able to move equipment up or down potentially. But I'm really speculating, so the National Capital Commission should be able to answer those questions for you.
Can you explain why $5,870 was spent on fiber optic cabling for the $8 million barn project? So we know that it has an elevator, we know that it's one story, and it's fully equipped with fiber optics. So I'm just curious why it needed the fiber optics to store vehicles and tools in it.
The National Capital Commission would be able to answer that question as the requirements in terms of what they needed to be able for the operation building. They would need to be able to define or explain
I
why that was
appreciate
necessary.
that. So back home in Miramichi, Grand Lake, most of us have a building or a barn, a baby barn, a storage shed. Depending on where you live and where you grew up, you might call it something different. But none of our storage sheds or barns cost $8 million. None of them have elevators, and none of them have fiber optics. As a matter of fact, the people in my riding don't have access to fiber optics. In my hometown of Blackville, as an example, we're a small municipality. We have satellite internet and other options. We don't have fiber optics, so it's really hard for the public to understand how much this type of waste would be put into an $8 million barn. Can you explain the marketing and communications firm and why it was engaged for nearly $6,000 on the $8 million barn?
Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, that would be a question that would have to be directed to the National
Can you
Capital.
guys answer any questions? That's a better question. Are you here to answer questions or to deflect?
So
Which one?
Point of order, Chair.
Yes, Ms. Khalid.
Thanks, Chair. I think when we invite witnesses to committee, we owe them the respect and not to badger. So I would ask through you, Chair, if Mr. Stewart can be a little bit more respectful to our witness.
One question like that is certainly far from badgering. Mr. Stewart, I'll turn it back to you. These obviously two witnesses have certain lines of responsibility, and just for everyone's awareness, the NCC will be coming in to see us. We anticipate after the recess week. Back to you, Mr. Stewart, and I did pause the clock for you. The clock for you have about just under 2 minutes.
So there was a marketing firm, communications firm engaged. Do you know why?
So the short answer to the question is no. And what I would say is...
Does the Treasury Board know why?
No, we do not. That would be a question that you'd have to address to the
Nobody
National
knows
Capital
anything.
Commission.
Were any of the construction contracts... actually, no. What was the initial approved budget for the $8 million barn?
So within the National Capital Commission's corporate plans, what they identify is their overall expenditures that they will be undertaking based on their entire budget, and they break that budget down based on large categories, including upkeep and maintenance of things like official residences, the entire suite of official residences. But this specific issue was not identified as a separate line item, so I don't know what the individual initial budget. But as part of their planning, they would have had budgets and budget projections.
Can you explain the procurement process for the $8 million barn?
So the National Capital Commission can answer, but one of the things that I would point out is, as a Crown Corporation, the National Capital Commission operates as much more as a private sector entity, and therefore are not subject to most of the policies and rules from Treasury Board, for example, that would apply to departments or agencies.
So it's safe to say that the sole sourcing of contracts was more than possible.
They have flexibility in terms of how they undertake their procurements. I don't know what processes they
I'll
use
take
for
that
these
as a
ones.
yes. How many contracts in total?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I don't know the answer to that question.
So then you don't know how many subcontracts either. So you don't know how many bidders, you don't know anything about their procurement?
No, their procurement process is operational, and given the arm's length nature of Crown corporations, that is the responsibility of both of the organization to be able to manage itself in accordance with the applicable rules.
Have either of you
And
been
thank you.
inside?
That is the time, Mr. Stewart. Turning now to Ms. Bradford, you have the floor for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for coming today. I know it's unfortunate that the NCC person isn't available because I guess they're on vacation, so I know you may not have answers to some of these questions. So I was just wondering if you, Mr. Arasi, am I saying that right? Okay, Mr. Arasi. Okay. In what level of detail does the NCC report its line item spending to PSPC?
The organization doesn't have obligation to report to PSPC. What it does is it prepares an annual report. It prepares a corporate plan on an annual basis, which basically identifies the activities that will undertake based on the totality of its budget. They break down those activities in kind of large buckets of activities, for lack of a better term. And that corporate plan is reviewed by the department in support of the Minister of Public Services and Procurement. To be able to ensure that the activities that the Crown Corporation is going to undertake are aligned with general government direction. And based on that, the Minister recommends the corporate plan for approval by Treasury Board.
So does the NCC have to seek approval from PSPC before embarking on projects? And if so, which ones?
From the Department of Public Services and Procurement Canada, no, they're not required to seek endorsement or approval. As an arm-length organization or Crown Corporation, they actually don't require our approval, or the department's approval, to be able to move forward.
So they have complete autonomy to decide what they're going to pursue and the budget for.
They have autonomy in terms of for the budget that they have, how they're going to expend and operationalize that budget.
Okay. So when the project was launched, do you know how long it was expected to last and whether it was on schedule?
I unfortunately don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. Would you have any idea if the costs are higher than similar projects carried out by the Commission or other organizations?
I can't do comparisons in terms of the NCC's activities because that would be within them. What I can say is I saw on one of the public information that the National Capital Commission has made that the project did come within budget that had been identified.
Okay, so maybe if you could just review the history of this project, because it keeps being referred to as the barn, and it's actually kind of a maintenance facility or storage facility. So could you give us more details about the history of the site and its prior use to this project?
So again, the National Capital Commission will be able to provide a more comprehensive response, but based on the information that I have, it used to be a series of 4 buildings which were past their life cycle and had some health and safety concerns that needed to be basically changed or updated or, well, demolished, basically. So as part of that, there was some site preparation. There had to be some abatement work and some demolition that had to be done of the previous facilities for the National Capital Commission to build this new storage facility, which, as I mentioned previously, does a number of activities, including vehicle storage, repair garage. It's an equipment and tool storage. They have workspaces there. And again, my understanding is that they use this facility to be able to undertake the maintenance of the 79 acres at Rideau Hall, or the Rideau grounds, I should say, pardon me.
Specific, particular specifications for this building, do you know?
In terms of requirements, the National Capital Commission would be able to let you know what their requirements were in terms of from an operational perspective. What I would indicate, which is again is publicly available information, is that the transition from the four old buildings, which were removed, to the new building is considered a green building and has zero carbon emission associated with it. But in terms of the actual requirements and what they're using the building for, what they needed in terms of size, space, equipment within it, again, the National Capital Commission, as part of its activities and its responsibilities, would be the one to be able to determine the requirements and undertake the activities to build the facility.
So this was a brand-new construction. Would it be reasonable to say that the fact that they were building it to the Canada Green Building Council's zero carbon building standards might have increased the cost, like there might have been additional costs incurred in order to achieve those standards?
I can't give you a definitive answer on that one because I don't have access to the analysis. The National Capital Commission could give you that. I have been informed through other activities in kind of industry and real property sectors that when you do go towards greening, there may be an additional cost at the beginning that will be incurred with the offset of greener facilities kind of on a go-forward basis. And depending on the amortization period, it may not be that much more expensive. But in the case of this particular building, for the National Capital Commission, again, they would be able to provide you with a response more specifically to this building.
And just to get it on the record, and this is public information, I believe this building is the Government of Canada's first zero carbon building in the National Capital Region.
That is what the National Capital Commission has posted on their website, yes.
Right, okay. I was wondering, could you explain to us how the government or minister communicates with Crown corporations?
Generally speaking, or with regards to the National Capital Commission?
Well, let's talk about National Capital Commission because that's what we're talking about in this case.
So from a communications perspective, there would be kind of two forms of communications. I would call them kind of formal and informal. From the formal side, it's some of the things that were mentioned by my colleague, which is so through the review of corporate plans, there are letters of expectations that are sent to the CEOs of all Crown corporations by ministers, which basically identify the expectations of the minister in terms of what the Crown corporations will do in terms of activities. And then, so those would be kind of the primary what I would call kind of formal, but of course ministers are free to be able to meet with both the chairs and CEOs, the chairs of the board of directors and or CEOs of the Crown corporations, to be able to ensure that government policy and government direction is understood by the Crown corporation, and that the Crown is seeking to adjust their activities to be able to be aligned with overall government direction. And
Thank you. That is the time. Maintenant, Madame Saint-Clair Des...
Now on to Ms. Saint-Clair Desgagnés for 6 minutes. Hello. The main idea for this meeting was to understand the context of these $8 million spent on a barn. Someone has a specific role, the Governor General, for example. There's a lot of public funds are spent to maintain that role, which is quite archaic. And it is probably a useless role, to be more direct. This $8 million expenditure for a single barn is problematic within the larger context of things. Let's see if you can give me any answers, because so far we've not gotten a lot of information from you. You talked about a plan at the Treasury Board, I believe. You approve it? A rehabilitation program, is that correct? Thank you for the question.
What happens is that the corporate plan outlines the major activities that are being planned by the Crown Corporation. The corporate plan goes to Treasury Board for approval. So it would outline the major activities. Like I said, it would not necessarily be project by project. It would be
Combien était le total?
major.
So what was the total amount that you approved for Rideau Hall?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I don't have that information with me.
Vous venez à un comité pour parler.
You're coming to a committee to talk about the expenses of Rideau Hall, and you don't have the information and how much you've approved as for expenses for Rideau Hall.
D'accord.
All right. That in itself is a very obvious lack of preparation. I would like you to submit that information as soon as possible, please. Now, let's move on to the next questions.
Is that something that submit the documents at a later date?
Submit information on the financials, financial information.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. As you said earlier, there is no line-by-line information, and there is a budget that was approved for renovations by the NCC. And what we're hearing here today is that included in those renovations, for example, was the destruction of a barn in order to build a new one. What's the difference between approving a renovation project and approving a budget for a new barn that has all this high-tech gear like fiber optics in a barn?
Du côté
With regards to the approval, the comparative plans of the NCC identify their total budget, which is divided between operational and budget capitals. In the operational budget, updates and renovations are included, for example, for buildings that are under the NCC's purview. With regards to the approvals and whether they are different, I can't answer for the NCC, but for the comparative plan, they are considered to be under the capital budget. So there isn't much of a difference, therefore, between renovation and new build. With regards to the Governor General's total budget, who approves the Governor General's budget? Hello? The Governor General specifically, I can't answer. For the NCC, they have a budget that they determine. The way they spend their budget, as I mentioned, is based on the comparative plans. Yes, no need to repeat yourself. We understood that. Specifically for the Governor General, who approves her budget? I know that it's not PSPC. I was thinking of the Treasury Board, perhaps. Is the Treasury Board the one who approves the Governor General's budget?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, that's not within my line of responsibility at Treasury Board, so I can't answer that question.
Et aucun des deux témoins ne approuve le budget.
And neither of the two witnesses knows who approves the Governor General's budget? The only thing I can say, and this is not something that I'm very familiar with, but as far as I know, budgets that are approved by Parliament are part of the estimates process. I don't know if I'm using the proper term, but it's supplementary estimates or main estimates. Those are the processes that the government go through to allocating budgets to different organizations. The Governor General's office might be a different entity, and I'm not sure about that, but that information could be sought out through the main estimates. Thank you for trying to answer. It's appreciated. Here's the problem. The budget is so large. The Governor General's office can allow itself to send $117 million in dry cleaning, $70 million or $70,000 for a limousine for a few kilometers during a trip in Iceland. I think it would be practical for the committee to know who approves these budgets, because that is our job. Who else is looking at these budgets as well within the department? That would be really useful to us. Sorry, Ms. St. Clair Desgagnés, your time is up.
Mr. Desjardins, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for the witnesses for being present here today. I do appreciate my colleague from the conservative members here present who initially motioned for this important questioning, because I think it touches on, I think this is a symptom largely of a greater issue of how there seems to be not so much an issue maybe there isn't an issue within the procedures, procurement, and operations of the NCC, but I think what's of biggest concern to most Canadians, and to be really frank, is the transparency, trust, and accountability of these expenditures. And so I think that in itself is something that I'd like to focus on, and how we can, one, understand the processes of accountability and transparency that are already within the NCCM that may, in many cases, we deal with large departments and large operations like yourself, and to better understand how within the NCC, how these things are made more accountable, because it's no secret that these issues affect a great deal of how the country looks at building trust with its institutions. Not only is this barn a pretty serious circumstance of what one would expect versus what Canadians get for their value, but just to confirm some of the facts, I think will be important for Canadians to better understand this. My first question is in relation to the type of project. It's understood as the barn. I understand that, of course, but my understanding is it's attributed that name because it sits on the former historical grounds of the original barn to which that stood there, but it's no longer operationally a barn. Is that correct?
Thank you for the question. That's my understanding as well, is that the term or terminology of barn is basically a reflection of the historical building that used to be there. But as I've indicated, the building really is a storage or repair workshop or vehicle facility. So while I know a barn conjures up images of certain types of buildings, for those of you who have the opportunity to take a look at the National Capital Commission's website where they have pictures, it was referenced before, it doesn't really look like a barn. It's much more of a kind of an industrial building with solar panels on top of it, fairly large carport.
And is this car garage, let's call it, this car garage barn, does it maintenance vehicles other than the Governor General's vehicles?
So I don't have a definitive answer to that. What I do know, it is meant to be for storage of vehicles for maintenance and operations of the grounds and the property. So while I can't give you a definitive answer on that, again, the information that I have is it's a storage area for vehicles for the maintenance of the grounds. So I presume things like snow blowers and trucks and whatever's used for ground maintenance. But again, I'm speculating a little bit. The National Capital Commission would be able to provide probably a more definitive response.
Okay, sure. And I think what Canadians really don't understand is how, these projects are reviewed for maintenance, how they're reviewed for operations, and how they're ultimately get precedent in terms of expenditure by the NCCM. The NCCM, the NCC. And so I think other expenditures that I'd like to, make comment on are that of Stornoway. We see $644 for a new leader of the opposition to move in there. That's a huge price tag just to change doors. Most Canadians don't go through that process. $170,000 for cleaning that same residence, taxpayer funded, and then over $100,000 of regular operations and maintenance. These things pile up. It's going to be way past $8 million in the short period of time. The amount of time that the opposition's been in there, it's been over $8 million. And so in terms of how we reconcile the process to how the NCC, taxpayer-funded money, and the request, review, and procedure by NCC or by within procurement, how are those functions actually dealt with in terms of it's a very initial setting of being reviewed as requiring maintenance? And so can you, or do you have a knowledge of, or could you walk us through that process so that, me and other Canadians can have some understanding as to how the NCC operates in terms of it reviewing need, assessing that need, and then ultimately creating an expenditure?
Thank you. So the National Capital Commission obviously would be able to provide you with more detailed responses, but in terms of helping the committee kind of understand how it operates, so when they provide their corporate plan, as I mentioned before, they have expenditures kind of within two, I'll call them buckets for lack of a better term, operating and capital expenditures. And so within those activities, they will identify the suite of work that they need to do and kind of prioritize those. So some of it will be for capital expenditures in terms of either needing to do upgrade or upkeep or construction of the numerous buildings and assets that they own in the National Capital Region. And then others will be associated with the operations in terms of making sure that these assets are operating kind of as intended. Now, in terms of how they prioritize within kind of those two envelopes, and even whether that's the way that they determine how to prioritize expenditures within those envelopes, the National Capital Commission, again, as an arm's length Crown Corporation, would manage that, including making decisions in terms of how it prioritizes it, and that would be reviewed both by their CEO as well as ultimately their board of directors. So I know that doesn't directly answer your question, but again, I think they've got a couple of different buckets of activities within which I'm sure that they must have a process in terms of how they prioritize their respective activities.
I guess to the Treasury Board Secretary, how do you receive or participate in this process?
So, Mr. Chair, as I explained, the decision to set up the NCC as a Crown Corporation was enabled by legislation through the National Capital Act, and they are governed by the rules as stated in Part 10 of the Financial Administration Act. So the NCC is responsible for managing their day-to-day operations on their own because of their distinct mandate and a decision to keep them as independent from government. The involvement of Treasury Board and the Treasury Board Secretariat is solely contained around the corporate plans and the operating and capital budgets that are submitted by the responsible minister. And those, again, cover the significant major activities that are detailed. It's not like a project-by-project approval by any way. It's actually up to the NCC to manage within the parameters of that corporate plan and the budget and with the appropriations that have been given to them.
Thank you. That is the time. Beginning our second round, Mr. Stewart, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The witnesses today, through the chair, you were asked to come here to committee to testify on an $8 million barn, which nobody in Canada would think is acting on the best, for the taxpayers of our country to have an $8 million barn laced with fiber optics, private security detail during construction, an elevator that potentially goes underground, but nobody knows where it goes. But most people's storage sheds don't have elevators and fiber op. But you didn't really say anything about the $8 million barn. You didn't say anything about its function. You didn't say anything about how the costs reached $8 million. And there's no accountability in any of that. So let's talk about the communication firm. Why does the Liberal government need a communication firm for an $8 million storage barn? Anybody can answer.
So, Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, I am not able to provide an answer to that question in terms of the specific expenditures, because again, they would have been part of the National Capital Commission.
That's fair. Is the $8 million barn going to be doing media interviews? Is that why? I mean, are they going to conduct interviews? Maybe the media would like to know how many tools are stored in the barn, or how many vehicles, or what makes of the cars, or. I mean, this does not make any sense. So if the two of you came in here today to be held accountable, we actually are going to have to get some answers. Have either of you been inside the $8 million barn? No?
I have not, Mr. Speaker.
No, I have
What's
not.
in there? Have you seen pictures of the inside? What's inside of it?
I've seen the picture that you had referenced before, sir. That's the picture that I've seen. I have not had a chance to visit it as of yet.
Well, is there anything you can tell us about the $8 million barn that nobody else knows but the two of you? Is there anything you could inform us on because I asked you about contracts, you didn't know who got them. You did know that it was flexible, less scrutiny than normally. What has the Treasury Board done to make certain that this aligned with government priorities?
Mr. Chair, as I've explained in the past, the corporate plan outlines the major activities that would be undertaken by the NCC and that they were planning to undertake. That plan was checked to see whether it was in line with the mandate of the Crown Corporation, in line with broader government priorities, and whether it was financially sustainable or not. Like I said, we do not detail project by project within corporate plans. There's a reason for that, so that it respects the independence of the Crown Corporation to manage within their funds, within their budgets, and in line with the
Okay,
with
thank
their
you for
own
that.
individual business requirements.
So the Treasury Board is perfectly fine with it and feels it's a good expenditure? It meets targets? Is that what you're saying here today?
Again, the corporate plans are submitted by the responsible minister to the Treasury Board.
Well, I think
for
with all due
consideration.
respect, there are no responsible ministers, as we've seen over and over and over drug out through this committee. At any point in the project, did anyone at the Liberal government stop to suggest that maybe $8 million is too much to spend on a barn? And if you want me to call it a storage shed, I will. I have one of those. It's not heated. It doesn't have internet capabilities. It does have electricity. You can turn a light on in there. Certainly isn't worth $8 million. So did anyone ever stop to think it was too much money?
I think the question that you asked was whether the government did. Again, I think the National Capital Commission could let you know what information they would have provided to during their work. From an overall perspective, as I indicated before, from a corporate plan perspective, these are not detailed. And
Was there no way to build a storage facility, $8 million barn facility at Rideau Hall for less than $8 million? Should it have cost $8 million?
so again, the National Capital Commission will be able to provide you with more answers. I think my understanding is that
Thank you for that. I'm curious to understand your opinions of the $8 million barn, and clearly you're worried about a few processes and there's no accountability. I don't feel like there's any accountability for the $8 million barn. The public cannot understand how an $8 million barn laced with private security, despite being the most protected property likely in the city here, maybe in Canada, it already has RCMP and parliamentary policing. They had a private detail outside during the construction phase. They have an elevator that nobody knows where it goes. It costs $8 million.
And thank you, Mr. Stewart. That is your time, I'm afraid. Pardon me, Ms. Khalid, you have the floor. Oh, pardon me, Ms. Shanahan, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. And let me start by thanking the witnesses for being here today. And we can see that you are doing your best to answer questions, which frankly are not in your purview. And the committee is looking forward to receiving Mr. Toby Nussbaum, the CEO of the NCC, the National Capital Commission, here when he gets back from vacation, because he is the one who is properly able to answer these questions, and we can ask our questions at that time. At the same time, it is educational for all members of the committee here to get a better understanding of just how the lines of accountability work, and I appreciate some of the answers that you gave earlier concerning the fact that the NCC submits a budget, but it's up to them to operate to do the operational part of it. There was just one question I had concerning abatement. When we know that when we're renovating existing buildings, very often there are problems. An environmental assessment has to be done, and there are other issues that can arise that wouldn't arise with a brand new construction. So, in your experience, and I think I'm asking Mr. Irachi, in your experience, what are some of those measures, and why would they cost money?
So, thank you. So, I mentioned that there were previous buildings there, and of course, depending on the age of the building, there could be some abatement work that would be necessary in terms of removing potentially hazardous materials. We know that some construction material that was used in the past is obviously no longer used and can be dangerous if not properly disposed of. So, from an abatement perspective, in terms of that would have been part of the preparation for the demolition work that would have had to be undertaken by the NCC prior to the construction of it. I also understand that there was soil contamination in terms of some of the soil around the buildings that needed to be remediated. So obviously, as part of the expenditures, those would have to be considered as and included as part of the expenditures for the new building. And those activities were undertaken by the National Capital Commission as part of getting the site ready in order to be able to do the construction.
Thank you for that. So, for the moment, just setting aside this project and speaking generally, what are the tools that PSPC uses to determine a fair price, to do cost comparisons in a unique or a standalone project? Can you give us some insight there?
So from a departmental perspective, in terms of the procurements we undertake or some of the activities that we would do as a department? And sorry, the reason why I'm asking the question is because the Crown corporations have different sets of rules that I'm not necessarily as familiar with than the ones for PSPC. So I just want to make sure.
So PSPC, where you see that there would be some commonality with Crown corporations, but I'm going to get back to Crown corporations in a moment.
So in a situation where, so again, my colleagues from procurement branch would probably be able to provide a more definitive response, but two approaches. One is typically procurements are done on a competitive basis, and through the competition, there's kind of an incentive for bidders to be able to ensure that the price that they're submitting is going to be competitive to increase the likelihood or chances of them being able to be successful on it. In instances where there's something that's really unique, either because we're buying something that only one company has, or there's a specific geographic corporate component where what would be considered directed or sole source contracts would come forward. Within the department, we do have cost analysts that are used to be able to undertake assessments of the proposed price to be able to determine whether or not it represents fair market value in terms of what the company charges other preferred clients and so on. So within the department, there are some activities and initiatives that we have to be able to take a look at the question of value for money as it's more commonly defined.
Very good. And just in relation, and actually it's Mr. Gear, I think you mentioned a couple of times that the NCC operates at an arm's length manner from the government. It's well known that prior to 2015, I believe it was the minister at the time, John Baird, that personally controlled the NCC. But after 2015, that practice changed. Can you just share your thoughts about why it's important that the NCC operate at arm's length from the government?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the decisions are made to set up Crown corporations, again, because of their unique mandates and responsibilities and activities. And these unique mandates require a certain amount of flexibility in terms of their administration and management. For example, there are a number of Crown corporations that operate in a competitive environment where there are certain sensitivities about what they can reveal and report. And certain limitations. So that's a specific regime that applies to those types of Crown corporations. In the case of the NCC, it has its own accountability structures and and policies with a board of directors that is accountable through the responsible minister to Parliament. And the NCC then undertakes its day-to-day operations under the oversight of that board of directors. There is reporting that is required of Crown Corporation. So as I've mentioned, corporate plan summaries are submitted to Parliament. Annual reports are submitted to Parliament by the responsible minister every year. And also there are a number of other recording requirements that the Crown Corporation undertakes through various other means. For example,
I'm going to have to stop you there just because we're just well over the time, but I appreciate it, and you're welcome to come back to that at further opportunity. Madame Sinclair Desgagnés, vous avez la parole pour seulement 2 minutes.
Ms. Sinclair Desgagnés for 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not very hopeful of getting any answers today, but I will still ask some questions. The board of the NCC had approved the reconstruction project for a work zone in Rideau Hall in 2019. This project had been delayed, which the Governor General's Secretariat had asked for. Do you know why the start of the works had been delayed if the barn was in such a state that it needed such large investments? Thank you for the question. I don't have the information with regards to the decision that the NCC made to pause the work or delay the work. Thank you. Do you know if the barn is a heritage building? That's a good question. I don't know the answer. I would say that probably not, because it's a new build. Unfortunately, I don't know the answer. On the NCC's website, the entire lot is a heritage site. So here's what I'd like to know. One building of the lot was destroyed and replaced with a very high-cost new build. Do you know anything about that? Difficult for me to answer. Here's what I know. There are situations where some buildings are so dilapidated that they are dangerous and they can't be used and can't be maintained and intact. And so when they're on such a lot with a heritage, on a heritage site, sometimes those buildings have to be removed for safety reasons. I know that that's not something that everybody wants to do, but sometimes it's necessary.
Yeah.
Just a moment.
Not sure, Mr. Chair, if it's a point of order, but I think it's important. There seems to be an awful lot of information on older, dilapidated buildings flowing from the two witnesses, but nothing on the barn.
Yeah, Mr.
We're here
Stewart,
for the barn.
Yeah, Mr. I appreciate that, but that is not a point of order. Madame Sinclair Desgagnés, il vous reste.
Ms. Sinclair Desgagnés, you have 20 seconds left. I had 30 seconds before the point of order. In your experience, Mr. Yarachi, have you seen these kinds of expenses to preserve heritage buildings? In this case, it's not even what's happening. The building was destroyed and rebuilt. Have you seen these kinds of expenses often in your job? The building of real estate is not something that I'm very familiar with, and so the fact that this building cost $8 million is not something that I can have a point of reference on. I can't tell you if it's efficient. The NCC will be more apt to answer and give you more details on this. Thank you. Mr. Desjardins.
Have the floor for 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I also want to thank the witnesses for being in attendance here. I fully recognize the NCC is not present here, and many of the questions that were directed to you today should in fact be directed to the NCC. So myself and I think my committee colleagues will have to take that into consideration when thinking about next steps, and something that I think our chair will be able to follow up with. In relation to, I think, the source issue of this topic isn't only about this one barn. The one barn doesn't operate in isolation. It's about how, at least to me, it's about how the process and procedure and how, for example, public services and the Treasury Board and the NCC interact with one another in order to create oftentimes what is, cycles and processes of mistrust that Canadians feel in this process, whether it's a Liberal or a Conservative government. This has been going on a long time. This similar controversy took place when Stephen Harper was Prime Minister, and it was his own residence that was contemplated at the time of the Prime Minister's residence. And now, of course, we both know it's not used. So there are risks to politically motivated decisions when it comes to NCC's processes of intaking information and attempting to then reconcile those later on. We often see higher costs. And so I think there's a larger issue here that stems to the transparency, the trust, and I think the efficacy of spending related to these kinds of projects. And so that's, I think, what will be of most importance to me moving forward as a member. I think that's probably where we should focus most of our time if we want to actually build trust and we want to actually do the work of holding accountable Canada's institutions to these kinds of expenditures. And so I'd like to give a moment to both of you gentlemen who are present here to talk about how we can strengthen transparency and accountability in your perspective and your roles and your experience, to how we can avoid a situation like this where the public perceives such a great level of mistrust in these types of expenditures, whether it's the one, whether it's the official opposition's residence, Stornoway, for example, that continues to build up taxpayer funds, charges to the taxpayers, or it's this.
Did you want to go first?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So one thing that I will say is that it has certainly been not gone unnoticed that Parliament has made more and more requests for greater transparency on the part of Crown corporations. And I will note that we have been working with Crown corporations to try to enhance reporting and transparency. For example, we have been asking Crown corporations to report more on a number of government priorities, such as diversity and inclusion, as well as greening operations and the environmental and sustainable development goals. So there has been efforts made, and there will continue to be more efforts to further enhance the reporting of Crown corporations. There are a lot of things that need to be considered as we do look at measures to enhance transparency. As I mentioned, some of these Crown corporations do function in a competitive environment, and there are certain restrictions in terms of the information that can be disclosed. But we are continuing to work on that with Crown corporations and again, respect the obvious desire by parliamentarians for greater information.
Thank you very much. Mr. Nader, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to our witnesses. And I will maybe start by pointing out that, the NCC does have a lot to answer for, and I do look forward to hearing from Mr. Nussbaum of the NCC, who, of course, we'll all remember was the infamous Ottawa City Councillor who quit days after the 2018 municipal election, triggering an expensive by-election here in the city of Ottawa. So I guess we know where his care for taxpayer dollars comes from. And so look forward to hearing from the current CEO and former Liberal Party donor, Mr. Nussbaum, when he comes to committee and hopefully when he gets back from vacation. So looking forward to that. I'll start off by saying, as a farm kid from Logan Township, $8 million for a barn, a shed, a storage facility, it just boggles my mind. When we can hear quotes from contractors talking about maybe $120, $150 per square foot, and then hearing somewhere in the neighborhood of $930 per square foot. I mean, obviously that boggles the mind for folks who are in the business of contracting. Barn doggle, as my friend Mr. Stewart would state. But I'm new to this committee, so I'm forgive me if some of my questions may seem rudimentary or just scratching the surface. But I'm curious, Mr. Gear. I understand there's a directive on the management of projects and programs through the Treasury Board Secretariat. Could you confirm whether or not the National Capital Commission is subject to that directive?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. As a Crown Corporation, they are not subject to that particular directive.
So would you be aware whether or not there was an organizational project management capacity assessment done at the National Capital Commission?
I don't know. I don't have that information myself.
Mr. Uratsi, similar question for you. Do you know whether there was an organizational project management capacity assessment completed?
For the National Capital Commission, I don't know the answer to that question.
Would you be aware of the project complexity and risk assessment tool that the Treasury Board Secretariat has implemented, where each project is subject to such an assessment?
Myself, in terms of for Public Services Procurement Canada?
Yes.
So yes, within our department, we are subject to that policy, and so we have mechanisms in place, particularly on our real property side, in terms of project management. All projects are assessed based on risk and so on.
So, PSPC, what is your OPMCA assessment level?
Oh, I'd have to come back to you on that one. I don't remember if we're 3 or a 4, but this is an area that's way outside of my expertise. But we do have an OPMC that's been approved by Treasury Board Secretary.
Oh, absolutely, and the PSPC at a 3 or 4 level is able to deal with very high levels of complexity for projects. I would be led to assume at a 3 or 4 level, you're talking the 4 is obviously the highest, 3 is second highest. So obviously very complex projects that PSPC could undertake.
Yes, I mean, I think I know members of this committee as well as members of, I believe the chair refers to it as the mighty OGO, often get to hear about the various activities that Public Services Procurement Canada does in a number of areas, including real property, digital services, receiver general functions. We have numerous business lines. Because of that, we obviously need to have, as a department, we obviously need to have fairly strong approaches in terms of project management as well as risk management and all the other things, and we abide by the Treasury Board policies and directives.
So flipping back to Mr. Gear for a moment, as the executive director within the Center of Excellence for Crown Corporation, we know that the base class for the OPMCA is where there's no OPMCA class level. It's a $2.5 million project base without a PCRA. So obviously, if we're talking about the NCC, which does not have an OPMCA, it does not have that specific expertise. Anything over a $2.5 million base project would have to go for Treasury Board approval. From a Center of Excellence standpoint, do you find it concerning, that an organization like the National Capital Commission, which doesn't have this assessment done for its project management capacity, is able to go ahead with an $8 million project without that oversight, without that expertise in project management for an $8 million project, which for all intents and purposes seems to be far overpaid for what was received. Is that a concern at the Treasury Board Center of Excellence?
So what I can say, Mr. Chair, is that as I have explained, Crown corporations are not subject to Treasury Board policies and directives.
Well, that's
However,
my concern.
as a best practice, we do encourage Crown corporations to adopt their own policies and procedures that are similar to the ones that we do and have in place as part of the Treasury Board policies.
I'm afraid of time, Mr. Nader, but I think you got your line of questioning for the next witnesses. They're all lined up for yourself. Mr. Blois, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Look, listening and watching this committee today, I think is a bit of a microcosm of why we're one of the only, as I understand it, G7 countries in the world that has not been able to actually replace the residents of whoever occupies the Prime Minister's office. And I want to qualify my comments that, of course, there has to be a role for scrutiny in the role of Crown corporations or government agencies in terms of reinvesting in infrastructure that is important, not only for democracy, not only for our national heritage, but just the function of government here in the National Capital Region. But just listening to the line of questions, again, scrutiny is fine, but it's no wonder why we can't actually upgrade some of the really important institutional buildings in our corporate memory and our history in this country. And I think just seeing the motion and the line of questioning is a result of that. I want to ask Mr. Gear, Just so for Canadians at home that are watching, the National Capital Commission was an organization set up independent of government to be responsible for how many different buildings and what types of buildings in Ottawa. Can you explain that for Canadians?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have the exact number on the number of buildings. I know it's the largest landowner in the region by far in terms of the volume of area, and there are probably dozens of buildings, but I don't know whether Mr. Irachi might have more specific numbers.
That's okay, but essentially there's buildings that the National Capital Commission has purview over that relate to Canada's history as it relates to some functional buildings that are still used, whether it be by the Governor General, by the Leader of the Official Opposition, by the Prime Minister, etc. That's fair to say, correct?
Sure.
Okay. And do you have an estimated number of what the budget is on an annual basis for the National Capital Commission?
I have the numbers for 2021, 2022. Their budget was $239 million in total.
Right. And again, the questions that I've heard my colleagues ask, I think it's fair, and to be fair to you as officials that are not directly responsible for the National Capital Commission, we'll look forward to the opportunity to ask on specifics about this particular storage shed on Rideau Hall. But we're talking about an $8 million expenditure on a roughly $250 million budget. And again, I think that there could be qualifications made about why it is that the specific project was needed to be funded in this fashion, different elements. That's all fair game. But at the end of the day, the government itself is not directly involved in making these allocations. I presume that when the budget is allocated to the National Capital Commission, they are expected to follow their own policy guidelines that hopefully would fall somewhat similar to the Treasury Board, but that they are independent and are trying to be arm's length from partisan considerations about how we actually go about reinvesting in these buildings. Is that fair?
Mr. Chair, I would generally agree with that observation, that is the reason why the NCC was originally established, and that, again, they are responsible for making the day-to-day decisions on how they spend within their budget, as long as it is in line with their mandate and the corporate plan priorities that have been approved by Treasury Board.
Okay. No, I really appreciate that because, again, at the end of the day, I want Canadians to understand. I see sometimes videos from politicians gaslighting this issue about the fact that, and it's a challenging time for Canadians right now. I know that as well. In my own constituency, people are facing difficult decisions. There is a requirement for either Crown corporations or governments themselves to reinvest in properties. And perhaps there are instances, and this may be one, that there's an ability to re-examine. But I think that we have to be careful as parliamentarians not to take a look at a particular expenditure and just simply suggest that simply it was coming from the wrong intent or that it was not a necessarily capital reinvestment that is crucial to the functioning of government. I take Ms. Sinclair Desgagnés' point. Ideologically, she doesn't believe in the role of the Governor General. But at the end of the day, that is Canada's constitutional requirement. And at the end of the day, we want to have facilities that actually support the role, that support our Constitution in this country. And I think we have to be careful not to necessarily just make ad hoc statements that somehow there's an abuse of power or that these expenditures were not justified. Mr. Chair, I see I'm coming close to the end of my time. I was appreciated that the officials were able to provide some clarity, hopefully, to Canadians about this process.
Thank you, Mr. Blois. As were we. Gentlemen, I appreciate you coming in today. I'm now going to suspend this meeting. You're both excused. We have some in-camera business work that we'll set up, but I appreciate you both coming in here today. And for the information that was requested, if you could have that submitted to the committee as soon as possible. Thank you both very much.
you.